we are super pleased to have everybody here. So without further ado, I'm going to crack on. We're at 1:50. So agenda for today, we're just going to do a brief round of introductions, and then we'll move into Brian's talk, which is why everyone's here, on AI and research development. If we have time, we'll touch a little bit on some of Atom's features. I'm the founder of a company that's hosting this webinar, and so just a little bit about what we do as well. And then we'll also have time for Q&A, as mentioned. So all of the questions that have come through in the chat, we'll make sure we address if we've got through all of them and people want to come off mic and interact conversational style, we can do that too. And hopefully we'll wrap up at the hour, and that should see us through. So introductions, I'll just say a bit about myself. So I'm Tomer, I'm one of the co-founders here at Atom. Come from a research and technical background myself, studied physics up to a master's in the UK. Ended up not going down an academic path, was on track to do a PhD, decided not to move into tech. I was a founding engineer at an early stage startup for a couple of years, but my heart's always been in research. My father was a professor at Oxford, and so I grew up surrounded by research, and decided to build tooling to support the research ecosystem, looking at how can we use AI to support researchers and research administrators from a lens of funding. So we have a grant discovery platform, and we'll touch on that later. Today we've got Brian Evans, who is, I'm going to let him introduce himself, but just a couple words from me. Brian's a friend. He's one of our earliest adopters as well. He's been instrumental in helping us build out the platform that we're building as well. And he is also on our board of advisors now. We're super pleased to have him. He's been I couldn't think of a better person to have on board, and super excited to hear about this talk, Brian. I heard great things from the last one, and keen to hear all of the things you have to say. But yeah, please give us a couple words about yourself, and then we can crack on with your talk.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks, Tomer. So I'm Brian Evans. I'm the Assistant Director of Strategic Research Initiatives at the University of Memphis. I do have a background in academia, PhD in biomedical engineering, was a professor of BME at Vanderbilt, an instructor of vascular surgery at the medical center, then also worked in the pharmaceutical industry and also in biotechnology investment. So kind of been in the research space for a long time, and really excited to talk to you all today. Tomer, can I share my screen now?
Yeah, I was going to pass over to you. So please share your screen, and really looking forward to it. I'll turn myself on mute and pass over to you.
All right. All right. Okay, can everybody see that?
Looks good to me.
All right, perfect. Today we're going to talk about utilizing AI tools in research development. Kind of already introduced myself, so I'm just going to hop into it. I'm going to probably skim through some of these things just to make sure we have time at the end to answer questions, but I'm happy to share this presentation with anybody or follow up with you. I did drop my email into the chat if you have follow-up questions after today's webinar is done. All right, so let me get the right screen up. There we go. Okay, so some of the topics we're going to cover today in regards of using AI in research development is leveraging AI to enhance proposal development, how AI can scan and match research foci with relevant grants from opportunity databases, harnessing the power of AI to develop more competitive grants and doing that responsibly, the role of generative AI in understanding, communicating, and measuring impact of research. We're going to cover some of the tools that are out there. There are many, so we're not going to go on a deep dive into all of them, but we're going to look at those in the context of practical applications and also discuss ethical considerations because there are many. And then also looking at AI as a partner. So instead of artificial intelligence, I like to think of it as augmented intelligence, where you still have a human in the loop, or HIL. and that is to enhance human decision-making and also efficiency in research administration and research development. And we'll briefly cover a prompt guide. I'm just going to show some examples and different topics, but I do have a detailed document for a prompt guide in RD that I can share with everybody after the presentation. So this is just an interesting article I came across recently, that this is the year that the frontier firm is born. So we're all aware that we're entering a new reality where AI is rapidly advancing, and it's going to rewrite the way that we do our work, and it's going to transform knowledge and the work as we know it. So all organizations today must navigate this challenge of preparing for this completely new landscape, where AI agents will gain increasing levels of capability and that humans will need to harness as they adapt their organizational blueprints. So just kind of covering where AI, this is kind of a 1,000-foot view of where AI can be used in research development processes. So as I kind of covered in the overview, funding opportunity identification, so screening large databases and pulling grants, especially relevant to more specific criteria. It can assist with proposal writing. That ranges from just providing boilerplate text all the way to research summaries when you're doing a literature review, and also refining your drafts. It can facilitate researcher and industry partner matching, utilizing the profile of a researcher or a company to make those connections. It can definitely be utilized in data analysis and reporting. I think everybody deals with larger and larger data sets today, so being able to have an automated manner to parse through those large data sets and actually gain insights is extremely valuable. It can also be used to automate administrative tasks like scheduling, email drafting, document management, and there are many others. It can also help with faculty support and training, even onboarding new employees, staff, or faculty. And it can also be used for strategic forecasting. So using predictive analytics to identify trends, identify where there are gaps and areas of high need so that you can adapt your strategic plan moving forward to account for those. And also in terms of resource identification and compilation. So that's even further outside of just looking for grant and funding opportunities, looking for, if you need specialized facilities or, putting things together for literature review or, developing a kind of white paper to frame the work that you do. A lot of different examples there. So we'll start off with looking at how AI can be used to match research foci with relevant grants from opportunity databases. So it facilitates accelerated data analysis, so it can quickly go through large data sets, and that's better than having a human do it manually because that can be very tedious. It can provide targeted matching, so by analyzing your user profile, project details, your past work, past funded grants that you've received, it can suggest more tailored funding opportunities that are the most relevant to your needs and your goals. It can identify new sources of funding that you may have not been aware of before. It can improve your decision-making in terms of making sure that you find a suitable opportunity to pursue, whether in terms of scale or matching to, where you are in your funding pursuit in terms of staging. That's very important in terms of, if you're trying to find funding opportunity for an early stage researcher that, is just beginning their career versus somebody who is mid-level or somebody who's extremely advanced and has developed an entire research ecosystem around their work. Can also simplify information, so concise summaries of funding priorities and descriptions, looking at eligibility criteria. I'm sure all of you have seen extremely long solicitations or notice of funding opportunities that are, can be 80 to 120 pages, and it is extremely tedious to go through. So up here, I put some examples of AI-powered platforms to search through these opportunities. Obviously, Adam who's hosting today. But there are some other ones. A lot of these are actually specific to Europe, and things like instrumental, that's specific for foundations. But Adam is great in terms of these things. I'm sure Tomer, if he has time, will cover this at the end. But being able to, instead of just put a keyword into grants.gov and getting a bajillion results back, and then you have to parse through all of that, find a needle in a haystack for finding the right opportunity. The AI platform for Adam provides contextual clues, so you can paste in an entire abstract, a specific aims page, and it will take all of that in to provide more relevant funding opportunities. Also in terms of just, creating your user profile and referencing publications that you have and your past work, it automates the process of knowing what type of work or research opportunities that you're looking for. It even automates that, so you don't even have to be in the process. It will send you updates automatically on new funding opportunities that match your research profile. And it's also a powerful tool for administrators because it allows great analytical tools to kind of visualize what people are searching for, people's engagement, where their gaps in terms of different areas that are kind of not picking up their weight and there's some slack, and that you can strategize to increase your capabilities across the board. So that's just an example of a couple that obviously we adopted Adam, and those are some of the great things that it offers in terms of a platform to look through funding opportunities. Another example of this is that AI can enable public-private partnerships. I'm sure all of you are abreast of the tumultuous federal funding landscape right now. A lot of federal funding is being cut and is uncertain right now. And so a lot of people are kind of shifting their priorities to look at foundations, but foundations can only pick up so much, and they're going to become saturated as more people target those types of opportunities. So another big one is looking at industry in terms of their participation in R&D, especially with universities, university industry partnerships. And one example of this that I'll just point out is First Ignite. That's one where it enables company matching, so you can utilize patents or publications, the IP portfolio at an organization to scan and identify companies that are relevant. It identifies those companies and facilitates connections. So it'll actually put you in touch with somebody there so you can explore collaborative opportunities, developing a partnership, or even looking at licensing opportunities. And a lot of these tools like First Ignite, and there's some other ones here at the bottom like Halo, and Part, Pillar Science, Confer. There's actually one even from the National Science Foundation, the AI for OPT Industrial Partners Program. But they allow to do market research, which is very useful as somebody who's, spun out my own company from my work in academia. Market research was always a big barrier because, a lot of the research that's out there, you can find these reports that are exactly what you need, but they're behind a very expensive paywall to access the data within the report. And so, using things like this can enable different activities like licensing technologies or IP, identifying industry-sponsored research opportunities, and also identifying industry partners that have advanced core facilities that you could potentially have access to so that you can bolster and strengthen your research programs. So in terms of leveraging AI to enhance RD, AI, obviously, I think most of you know, it's creating systems capable of performing tasks that normally require a human. And that includes learning from experience, recognizing patterns, and understanding language and making decisions. I'm sure everybody here is familiar with ChatGPT. If you don't remember, ChatGPT was released in November of 2022, and within 2 months, in January 2023, over 90% of college students reported that they were using ChatGPT to help them complete their homework. So that's to say that AI is pretty much ubiquitous at this point, and it seems to be advancing at an accelerating rate. And so if you look at ChatGPT, which is a large language model that analyzes text, it's trained on data sets, and GPT was trained basically on the internet. So it was trained on 10 trillion words, and that's equivalent to about 2.4 billion research papers. But it's also trained off of user interactions with the large language model. So it's continually improving, although there are some caveats which we'll look at later in terms of potential bias and different things to be aware of or wary of and using these LLM models and how they're trained. So we will cover prompts in more detail, but just to kind of highlight this, robust AI prompts are critical to getting the best results. So this is just an example I thought was great from First Ignite, and it's how to write AI prompts. So you want to make sure that you provide context, you're an RD professional, define your task, how you can leverage AI for your job, give it very precise instructions, and say, you want to better understand the most repetitive and time-consuming tasks that you can make more efficient with the use of AI, and clarify and refine it. How long of an answer do you want back from utilizing AI? And then you also want to clarify that it understands the task. So AI can, outside of finding funding opportunities, it can also look at communicating and measuring the impact of research. So if you do research and you're within your own silo and you don't make it available and accessible to the public, then it can limit how you're going to expand your research programs and advance in the future. And so an example here pulled from Elsevier Pure. It has an impact AI platform. And so it looks at academic significance, novelty, reach, applicability, collaboration, transferability, and engagement. And it kind of develops this heat map to give you a holistic view of the impact of that work. And that's really important to show that you have evidence-based impact narratives. And that's a key component of a lot of proposals when you're writing them. You want to, broader impacts for NSF or the significance and innovation for NIH. I mean, there's something similar with pretty much every funder out there, and stating it clearly how you're going to have an impact with the research that you're pursuing funding for. And again, this is going to be repeated over and over today. AI is only as good as the data that you train it on, so it's directly correlated to the training data and the input. So here, it's key to make sure that you have inputs on projects, the people, their publications, what type of activities they're involved in, different engagements, awards and prizes they've received, what patents and policies they've had their hand in or an inventor on, if they've been involved with spin-outs, things like that. And so having a broad and detailed data set will improve the results that you can get from utilizing AI tools. And trust and transparency we'll talk about in more detail, but you want to make sure that the data you're providing is trustworthy, and that you're providing access to the underlying data, but there are privacy concerns there. You don't want to release anything that's confidential, especially in terms of anything covered under intellectual property or existing policies for your organization, or even outside of that with region, county, state, national regulations. So we are going to get into some of those ethical considerations and look at some practical applications of AI. So LLMs are large language models. They're designed to understand human language, and those are based off of massive training data sets like ChatGPT being trained on the internet. And they're only as good as the data they are trained on. So inherent bias is always an issue. And so AI is ersatz human. So ersatz is basically an inferior replacement. And the problem here is that a lot of people are starting to acknowledge now is that there is a lot of content on the internet that is generated by AI. So it's kind of like ChatGPT is basically having a conversation with itself to train itself. And so that can lead to a lot of downfalls. So, trained on their own generated content or artificial data rather than real world diverse and nuanced data. And that results in drifting from reality and also in self-reinforcing feedback loops. So that actually can lead to something that people call AI model collapse. And so that is something to be aware of. They also have next generation LLMs that can utilize a broader array of training data. So there are vision language models, or VLMs. So those use visual data, images or video. There's large voxel models, or LVMs, and so that uses 3D like spatial data, and that's largely applied in using AI during surgical procedures, and especially in the healthcare industry. And then there are multimodal large language models, so that's combining, say, an LLM with a VLM, so that it can utilize different types of data in terms of its training and its output. So cybersecurity remains a primary concern. One of the questions I saw that was submitted was, can you trust ChatGPT even if you click on the thing saying, do not allow access to this, or the privacy option? You still can't trust it. So using free ChatGPT or Claude or any of the other free platforms out there, you do not want to use confidential materials for, because it is trained on the user interactions. So you can't say that, down the line that data could be compromised because they change what their policies are. It's advancing so fast that the regulations and policies are just playing catch up to how quickly AI is developing. And many organizations have restrictions on the use of certain AI tools. Like here at the University of Memphis, we're actually only allowed to use Copilot, which is kind of frustrating, but we can't even use other things like Otter AI, or I saw somebody put a note taker in at the beginning of this presentation. So you have to be aware that your organization may have restrictions. And so a lot of you may have heard of AI hallucinations, and that's a persistent concern. And so that's when AI generates incorrect or misleading information and then presents it as fact. So that's just to say AI is not always reliable. A good example of that, I'm sure everybody saw in the news that RFK Jr. Issued a Department of Health and Human Services report where it was obviously created with AI because they were just made up false references at the end. And that's something, especially in the academic realm and research development, that you have to be aware of. But there are tools out there that actually do have better protections in place to make sure that it is verified, trustworthy data that it returns. So just make sure that you fact check everything, especially depending on what type of AI tool you're using. So as I said, regulations are always going to be playing catch up because it's just advancing at such a tremendous rate in terms of technology development. So we need guardrails that prioritize research integrity, accelerate innovation, and address obvious issues like data privacy and security. We also need to reflect on non-obvious issues like how practices and expertise of research communities will evolve, whether for better or for worse. And although AI has benefits including abstractions, efficiency, and scaling, there are concerns that remain in terms of blind spots and potential bias. The model itself still has no knowledge beyond the statistical regularities of its training data. Validation and responsibility. So it's a crucial role for the researcher to validate research outputs that are produced with Gen AI tools. Responsibility is an area that is particularly sensitive and discipline specific. Most fields have tacit understandings of roles and responsibilities. For example, principal investigator, student, corresponding author, etc. And those can differ substantially from those in even closely related fields. In terms of transparency and documentation, organizations may have blanket bans or restrictions or on outputs or permissions with disclosure. Must emphasize that AI-generated outputs should be original, reflecting the author's actual work. And there are laws and regulations for patents, copyright, and data use policies. And so that's all something to keep in mind. And in terms of documentation, maintaining documentation and reporting transparency it's going to remain critical to ensure that the reproducibility and replicability of those findings produced with the help of Gen AI tools is something you can trust. And so in terms of data privacy and protection, Gen AI tools should not be assumed a priori to be private or secure. Like I said, with the free ChatGPT, Inputting sensitive, private, confidential, or proprietary data into those tools may violate legal or contractual requirements or expectations for privacy. And then finally, in terms of resource utilization trade-offs, that kind of looks at the larger societal impact of what using AI entails. And so we know that the magnitude of computational resources for operating AI on our planet, it produces large volumes of training that utilize large volumes of training data, the electricity use and potential cooling water associated with it. It can be in tension with values associated with sustainability. So that is something to keep in mind, especially in terms of what your organization's missions and priorities are. So looking at where AI is most useful in research development, this is coming from my perspective as somebody who works in academia, but it can help with summarizing extensive content. It can help you rewrite for tone and clarity. You know, everybody's guilty of using field-specific jargon. I definitely am, from having a biomedical background, and, you know, just making the assumption that your audience is on the same page. It can help organize disorganized content. It converts notes to outlines or drafts and can help even organize those. Say you have a meeting where there are a lot of talking points all over the place. It can organize it into a concise summary that is easy to follow. It can help with aligning proposal components, making sure that your aims are connected to the task and the outcomes, and so that the entire proposal is fluid. It can also suggest metrics and add specificity to the milestones and outcomes for your proposed research. It can also help with graphic generation, especially in terms of workflows or visualized conceptualization or developing a visual representation of a model. So harnessing the power of AI to develop more competitive grants and doing it responsibly. Literature reviews are essential, especially they're always at the front of most proposals, and the introduction and justification for the proposed research. It's a great tool and it can save time and effort. You need to make sure that your prompts are effective and that you're fact checking everything that it returns. And in terms of the prompts, you want to be specific, as I noted earlier. And for example, summarize this abstract in 100 words or less, versus provide a concise summary of the key findings, highlighting the most significant results and their implications in 100 words or less. You'll get a much better response if you provide more detail in your prompt. And so, again, kind of continuing on what AI can do for grants and scientific writing. It can revise scientific text to improve readability, again, addressing that issue with jargon. It can improve grammar and sentence structure. It can optimize clarity and conciseness. Know that I was extremely verbose when I first started writing grants. And it can adjust your writing tone to be more formal, persuasive, or conversational. And it can also improve equity in science for non-native English speakers, and making sure that you reach a broader audience. It can also serve as a mock reviewer, taking into account review criteria specific to a funding agency or a funding opportunity. And that's a great tool to use as you are preparing your proposal, because in the end, it's going to be evaluated based on those review criteria, and that's how they're going to make their funding decisions. And so looking at AI as a partner, so again, back to that artificial intelligence versus augmented intelligence. It's not a replacement for humans. It's just a way to enhance human decision-making in research administration. Chase Bonham from First Ignite said it in a good way. We're standing on a beach, and AI is a tsunami wave coming in. The landscape is rapidly evolving, and accessibility for everyone is increasing. And it enables a huge increase in productivity, again, with caveats. Even Google searchers, as you've seen now, have an AI overview provided through Gemini. They can summarize and take meeting notes, and even take those meeting notes and draft a proposal outline. It can effectuate matching recommendations, utilizing researchers' backgrounds, or potentially with industry, as we covered earlier. It can generate a summary, an application checklist, or templates for specific funding opportunities. Adam does this very well. It provides an application checklist and a summary of the opportunity without having to read those extremely long solicitations or NOFOs or RFAs, RFPs, whatever acronym you want to use for the funding opportunity announcement. And then it can also help with data analysis, so gaining insights into funding trends, either at the national level or within your own organization, and it can provide categorical breakdowns for your organization or institution. So now I want to move on to agentic AI. And so agentic AI is kind of different than a large language model. It's a system that's capable of autonomous decision-making and action. And it operates with less human oversight to achieve specific goals, kind of like a personal assistant. You know, a lot of call centers for customer service, they are now switching to having AI agents kind of bridge that gap. And these AI agents proactively identify tasks, they formulate plans and execute actions. And the way they do this is you integrate LLMs or other MLLMs, VLMs, et cetera, external tools, as well as your application programming interfaces or APIs. And that allows for complex workflows and dynamic problem solving. It's pretty, I mean, I am not an expert in agentic AI, but I have talked with a lot of people who've talked or discussed the benefits of it. And there are a lot of experts out there that can do consulting work if you want to develop one. But you basically have to train it and give it the tools that it needs so that it can be oriented towards a specific task or kind of like a job description for the AI agent. And for just to provide an example, based on my background in biomedical research, these AI agents can propose research questions, they can highlight unmet needs, they can launch multiple studies at the same time, and they can continually update stakeholders with findings. It also is extremely helps with data-driven decision-making. So it can analyze large data sets and provide insights to inform decisions and optimize strategic research initiatives. One example here with our university is we keep track of all of our proposals and awarded grants through CAIUs. It's our system for tracking. And those data sets are massive. And going through them manually with a person can be very time consuming. So applying something like an AI agent to that can improve efficiencies in workflows and provide maybe additional insights that you wouldn't glean if you dive into the data, because you know you can get lost in the weeds and can't see the forest for the trees. So getting into a prompt guide for RD professionals, in terms of funding searches, these are just some examples, like find current NIH, NSF, DoD funding opportunities. I know that Adam has another webinar where they kind of cover some of the AI prompts that can go into their platform. You can have it identify private or non-federal funders that support research in a specific area. It can assess if the funder is the right fit for a project. And whether the researcher is at the right stage and a good fit for an opportunity. It can even compare the fit between multiple funding opportunities. And it can even recommend a funding trajectory for new faculty members. That's something we do here at the university. And that would be it's extremely helpful to us because we have sit-down meetings with all new faculty to talk about their funding trajectory. So I'm not going to go through all of these in detail. I'm just going to cover some of them. Like I said, I have a full document detailing these examples, and I'm happy to share that with you. Just reach out to me, or I can share it with Tamir and his team. So it can help with proposal planning, developing a timeline for developing the proposal with internal checkpoints. It can list standard required components for a complete submission, because as we all know, grant submissions can be very, very complicated and require a lot of ancillary and supported documents. It can help with proposal development support, in terms of drafting specific sections, clarity and rewriting sections, and also making sure that you're framing the content specific to the funding agency or the funding sponsor. It can aid with faculty engagement and internal communication, so prompting for preparing for meetings, developing an agenda. It can also assist with outreach materials and other places where, effective prompting is key is strategic capacity building. So looking at a portfolio, whether research or intellectual property or whatever you would like to look at, it can kind of give you a holistic picture of everything so that you can understand things more clearly. And you can also frame that within your institution according to its mission, its current status, etc. So these are other areas where effective prompts can be utilized in terms of metrics, evaluation, and visualization, reviewer expectations and risk management, compliance and institutional policy, and document review and automation. And then, as we talked about, like a custom chat GPT design, so an agentic AI that can act as an assistant for certain research development tasks. And again, I do have a full document that I can share with you, but I'm just kind of skipping over this for the time being pretty quickly, just for the sake of time. And so here's just a very, very small kind of look at different AI-based research development tools that are out there. Obviously, everybody's familiar with Adam here today. I think everybody knows ChatGPT, but there are a lot of other ones that are out there. I know one of the things people always worry about with ChatGPT, as evidenced by that DHHS report from RFK Jr., is that citations are something to always be worried about. But there are AI tools that are more specifically developed to be accurate and trustworthy, like Cite. That's one that I've had some of my colleagues work with, and it's provided trustworthy citations every single time with a link to the actual content to make sure that, it is something real and it's not something that was just made up or hallucinated by AI. And there are a lot of other ones. Grammarly is one that I think people have probably seen commercials for at some point, and that helps with tone, clarity, and writing drafts, things like that. And then there are a lot of other ones out there specific for, coding, like Cursor, the AI code editor, and all of these different things here. Thesify is specific for developing research theses or your doctoral thesis, master's thesis. There are ones specific for PDF-based documents, and there's even one called Scribe, which is great. It's where it'll basically track and take screenshots as you perform a process on your computer, and it will pretty much make a tutorial so that you can share it with somebody else. So you don't have to go through the painstaking process of developing that tutorial or information so that, that's applicable to onboarding new people or sharing a process with somebody or training others. And so those are just a couple of examples here. And one of the questions I also saw that got brought up when people were registering was looking at the cost versus the return on investment of AI-based research development tools. So as you could see by that prior slide, there are a ton of AI tools that are out there. And so how do you choose the right one? Specifically for us, we adopted Atom because it met us at a great price point and provided tools that we definitely needed. But we also, got quotes from other platforms, not specifically for funding opportunity identification, but for other things that we could use here. And some of them, they quoted multiple times what our entire operating budget is, in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that's just not feasible. So it kind of depends on your state and where you are financially for your organization, because like ours, it varies for us basing on justifying the initial investment. That's the biggest hurdle to kind of getting into utilizing these tools. And so key to looking at ROI is strategic planning, efficient resource allocation, and effective data management. And another way to look at your ROI is you need to make sure that you regularly monitor key metrics or key performance indicators to assess the impact of utilizing that tool. And one thing that we found very valuable is consider piloting different tools that are out there. They typically will offer a chance to pilot the use of the tool for a reduced price, and then that gives you a chance to more completely evaluate whether or not it's going to be worth it in terms of cost versus ROI. And so there's a huge distribution of how much these tools cost. So looking at this figure on the right, you can tell that there are some out there that are hundreds of dollars to ones that are several $100,000. So there is a wide range of cost associated with different tools that are out there. And based on a report from AI Authority from a Bassware study, and this was released on June 11th, so it's very recent, is that companies in financial technology, so this isn't specific to academia or anything else, but they've realized 136% return on investment. That ROI differs depending on what group of organizations that you're evaluating. So it's kind of difficult to say what it is specifically for RD and academia versus industry, especially within different sectors in industry. But people continue to adopt and develop these tools, and it's becoming more omnipresent. So it seems like you either get in the game or you're gonna be behind in terms of adapting and keeping up with the rest of the technological landscape. All right, so with that, I'm sorry I went through that pretty quick, but thank you all. This is just the last slide I have, just some things for consideration. And so from here, I guess we'll open it up and I can look through the chat to see questions. And Tomer, do you want to actually go over the Atom resources?
Yeah, I think we had a couple questions come through. So just in the interest of time, what I'll do is I'll just briefly touch on some of the Atom features that were mentioned, and then we're going to make sure we have at least 10 minutes just to go through questions. So I'm going to share my screen here, and then we'll go over into questions. And yeah, so I'm just going to talk about Atom. So Brian mentioned one of the cool features that we have, which is the ability to do searches using natural language. So we're a grant discovery platform at its core, right? But we don't use things like keyword search. We use natural language to do searching. So one of these really cool new features we actually just launched this week is the ability to put in searches like find me early career grants related to the field of AI from the NSF. And what the system will do is it will go in and will actually extract the context from that. So, and automatically apply filters. So the AI this is that kind of AI agentic thing that Brian was talking about. But we can also do cool things like drop in abstracts from papers. I think there was a mention of how do we secure private information. So all of the information that's being piped into our platform from your researchers, these are going to be walled off within your own organization's gardens. We're never leaking it. We're also ensuring that no information is ever being trained on as well. Just very briefly, a couple more things here. So our grant listings are pretty interesting as well. We've got AI baked into the entire kind of grant listing. So, we actually process the supporting documentation and feed that into context of the AI. We use that to generate the actual listing itself. So it's much easier to digest for researchers and administrators. But what we also do is we can extract specific eligibility requirements out of the listings themselves, and we actually have a chatbot with reduced hallucinations because we've trained the model specifically on the grant related context. So we can ask questions like who are the program officers, and the system's going to go in and it's actually going to answer directly from the supporting documentation. So this is where we're kind of trying to use AI to speed up the process of actually understanding is a grant suitable for me or not. There's a ton of interesting other features, including the admin panel where you can extract data analytics. You can create profiles for faculty really easily as well. One cool new feature I wanted to kind of mention here as well is we also automatically generate not only a research profile, so pulling in information from things like publications, awarded grants, personal websites, directories, these kinds of things, but also generating kind of eligibility profiles as well. So this is something that's been created for me. It's looking at my profile, and we're pulling this from publicly available information. So onboarding is super easy, and we can help you basically get you started super quick. So if you want to find out more, I'm just going to share my screen here. Webinars, cool. Let's just go on slideshow again. Yeah, if you want to find out more, discover more grants about how you can increase your funding, increase your engagement on your team, feel free to book a demo at that link there. But yeah, I just wanted to come back to Brian now and say thank you so much. That was an absolutely fascinating talk. I think fully deserving of all of the attendees that we've had. So, I think we have like 9 minutes here for questions. So I'm just going to go through the chat. I think most of them have been addressed, but Melody's was on privacy and information in Atom grants. I've already kind of covered that, but yeah, all of the information that you're providing into Atom, this is one of the differences between a platform like using ChatGPT and Atom is none of the information you provide us is ever going to be used to be trained on. It's all privately held within your organization's walls. And I don't think there are any other questions. Someone just raised their hand, so feel free to come off mic. We can kind of open this into more of a conversational style Q&A session if you want to. I can't see who raised their hand anymore, so I'm not. Hillary, question: how can we get the list of prompts from that Brian mentioned? Cool. You can send me that list, right? And what we'll do is we will share that in our follow-up email. So we have all of your emails. Will be alongside the recording as well as the kind of notes from the meeting as well. Melody, how do you train your AI platform? That's another one that I think I can answer. So what we do, we don't do we don't train our own LLM models per se. What we do is we scrape all of the supporting documents, all of the relevant context, any public information that's available on the internet, and provide that as context to our LLM models. So that's why we don't suffer from issues around hallucination, because actually all of the information that's being spoken about is referring to specific context that we provided it. So yeah. Heather, I'm just powering through these. Are there post-award features? I presume that's another one for Atom grants. At the moment, no. We do have some pre-award, like proposal development features coming to help you get proposals, out of your researchers' heads and onto paper and then through to submission. If you're interested about that, yeah, feel free. Oh, I did actually mean to put Brian's email on this slide. So I think Brian put his email already in the chat, but I'm gonna post that again so you can reach out to Brian. Yeah, I will. There we go. We can have it up. Quick fixes on the go. There we go. Brian's email is up there now. Thanks for pointing that out, Myra. Good to see you. Robin Lewis, does this platform include non-US funders / FOAs? Yeah, I presume this is another one for us. Yes, we do. So we cover a whole range of foundations and international funders as well. A thank you from Hillary. Yeah, again, I'll second that. Thanks, Brian. It was an amazing conversation. Robin Lewis, what is the percentage of US versus non-US? We're primarily a US focused, platform. We work primarily with US organizations, but we're dramatically increasing our coverage of international opportunities as well, so long as that they're available to US researchers as well. So if you're interested in learning more about that, Robin, feel free to drop me a message by email. I'm happy to dive into that with you. Hey, Cameron, can you live chat the Atom model to ask it questions about differences in applying to a DoD early career program versus an NSF early career program? I'm not sure I fully understand that question, but I
can speak to that a little bit.
Sure.
I think Adam will give you some insight. I don't know if the chatbot would bring all of these up, but obviously there are different types of requirements for those. For example, for an NSF career proposal, you only have 3 chances, and then after your 3rd try, you're done if you don't get funded on any of those. And it's, basically what the research that the person does is focused on and how it aligns with the programs that are available. It looks like NSF is reorganizing their directorates, whereas DoD has been a little less affected by all of the recent changes in the funding landscape. But I think another thing there is to make sure that always reach out to the program officers, because it's good to get on their radar and, get a feeling from them of whether, if you talk to both program officers from DoD and NSF, kind of gauging what the response was like and which one seemed more amenable and more likely to result in success.
Thanks for that, Brian. Tahir, how can we access presentation slides and the prompt document? I will share that all in an email follow-up. We've got your emails if you signed up for the webinar. Jana Watson Caps asks, if you demonstrate that the information provided is kept private, Atom as an example is fine, but more generally, if you wanted to create an offline platform, are there industry standard ways to make sure it is not trained on and then certify that to users? Maybe one for Brian. Do you have any examples of creating offline platforms? Maybe this is about like open source models and hosting those, I presume. Do you have any experience there at Memphis about exploring?
Yeah, and basically I've heard a couple of things come up, because privacy is always an issue and what it's trained on. A couple of things here. I've heard some people propose, installing an LLM on a computer and then completely disconnecting it from a network so that it can't have access to anything else. They do have plugins specific to large language models through APIs that, you can do a plugin and train it on a specific data set. I know somebody who was a researcher that was using AI and they trained it on electronic medical records specific to psychologists. And in terms of the way that it's trained on, a lot of the ones that usually come with a higher price point, the free ones are not going to offer all the functionalities, but some of the more advanced ones that have recently been released, as things go through iterations and continually improve, it is allowing more functionality in a way that you can provide some context of what it's actually trained on, and making sure that you address data privacy.
Yep. Thanks for that. Yeah, one of the things our co-founder did was actually host his own offline kind of models on a powerful computer that he has. So, there are ways to ensure that your data isn't being shared. A lot of the enterprise API licenses as well with these large kind of organizations have data privacy rules written into them. So if you want to explore all of that, I would dive into a lot of the enterprise agreements with these larger organizations. Again, from Jana, what do you think is coming down the pike in terms of what federal agencies or foundation/industry might require in terms of disclosing how AI was used in generating the proposal in any way? Do you have any best practices you refer to? Brian, maybe one for you.
Yes. So
basically, what
well, it depends. Certain journals require it, certain conferences require it, and it varies across the board. I think there are different documents that are out there for generalized guidelines or considerations, but I think that a lot of people are still catching up in terms of developing regulations and policies, especially even the federal agencies that are out there right now. Especially since they've had their hands full with restructuring and cuts that have happened. So it's just on a case-by-case basis. But there are some tools that I can probably share, or not tools, but some information I could share with you in terms of best practices there and what others do.
Awesome. So that brings us nicely to the hour. We've gotten through every single question. So I just want to say thanks again, Brian, for giving such a fascinating talk. It's always a pleasure. If anyone wants to contact either Brian or me, our emails are on the slide here at the bottom left. And yeah, we're super happy to have had everyone here today. If you do want to book a demo to see some more about what Atom does, our whole goal is really to help you discover more grants, increase your funding, and increase engagement amongst your faculty. So feel free to book a demo by scanning the QR code there. Pleasure. Thank you, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your days. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, everybody, and thanks for hosting me.
No worries.